I want you to picture the scene. It is 2 a.m. Eastern time.
Right.
The night sky over Tehran, which is usually this, tapestry of stars and city lights, is abruptly turned into day.
It's completely lit up.
Yeah. And we aren't talking about a minor skirmish or a warning shot here. We are talking about the U.S. Navy's Lincoln and Ford carrier strike groups launching this massive, synchronized volley of Tomahawk missiles. You have B-2 Spirit stealth bombers ghosting over the city, totally unseen until the payload actually drops.
It's what the reports call Operation Epic Fury.
Exactly. A decapitation strike, specifically targeting the regime and the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps infrastructure.
And usually the standard playbook for any nation under attack is that rally around the flag effect, right?
Right. History tells us that when the bombs fall, the public unites against the external aggressor. But the reports we have from the ground describe the exact opposite.
It's incredible. People in Iran aren't hiding, they're cheering.
They are on rooftops documenting the strikes. And that specific image, citizens actually welcoming an airstrike is a form of liberation that is sending a frequency through the geopolitical spectrum that's hitting Beijing harder than the actual shockwaves are hitting Tehran.
It really is.
Welcome to this special edition of our deep dive into the latest source material. I'll be guiding you through this alongside our resident analysts, and today we are unpacking a phenomenon the research is calling the dictator's nightmare.
It's a very fitting term. The core idea here is that what is happening in Tehran is being viewed by the Chinese people and, crucially, by the leadership in Zhongnanhai as a prophecy.
A mirror image.
Exactly. The sources suggest the silence inside the Chinese leadership compound is incredibly heavy right now. Because if the psychological wall protecting the regime in the Middle East can shatter that instantly, well, the wall protecting the CCP might be much thinner than they calculated.
So, in this deep dive, we're going to trace this whole chain reaction. We have reports on a digital revolt happening inside China that is cleverly bypassing AI censorship. We'll look at the physical signs of unrest, breaking the social stability contract, a desperate government crackdown on borders, and the underlying economic reality that explains why the government is panicking.
And we really have to start with the signal, right? The reaction inside China to the news from Iran.
You would think the Chinese internet, the Great Firewall, would just be scrubbed clean of this news.
You'd assume so, yeah.
But the sources show people are using deep cultural codes to communicate, and the most prominent one is the sudden, very ironic resurgence of the song Beijing Welcomes You.
Right, which, for those who might not remember the summer of 2008, that song was the anthem of China's grand coming out party for the Olympics.
It was so optimistic.
It was all about pride, openness, the end of the century of humiliation. But today, it is being posted with just incredibly dark irony.
The sentiment circulating is Beijing welcomes you, meaning they're welcoming the Tomahawks.
Yes, they are welcoming the exact same fate for the CCP that just befell the Iranian regime. It's essentially a coded invitation to the West saying, come here next.
That is a level of brazenness that feels very distinct from previous protests we've covered.
Yeah.
And the sources mention it getting even more direct under videos of Donald Trump on Chinese social media.
That was a fascinating data point.
Yeah, and just to be clear to you listening, we are strictly reporting what is in the data here, not taking any political sides or endorsing anyone, but the sources show a massive flood of SOS and Save the Chinese People comments under these videos.
But the most sophisticated piece of dissent is visual. Censors are just scrambling to delete this viral cartoon of Trump shooting the sun.
Right, and for a Western audience, that just looks like a standard political cartoon. But in a Chinese context, shooting the sun carries heavy mythological weight.
Exactly. It references the legend of Hu Yi, the archer, who shot down 9 of the 10 suns because they were scorching the earth.
So in Chinese political metaphor, the sun is almost always the supreme leader or the party.
Right, so depicting an external force shooting down the sun. You are invoking an ancient myth about removing a tyrant to save the people from suffering. It is about as subversive as you can get without typing out an actual manifesto.
But this digital anger seems to be crossing a physical threshold now. It isn't just venting online anymore. The reports on Douyin, which is the Chinese version of TikTok, are showing this trend of homemade resistance.
The videos are alarming.
We are seeing tutorials on how to manufacture crossbows using industrial rubber bands and high-tension springs, or modifications to heavy-duty nail guns. And the catchphrase accompanying these videos is really telling.
If you can't buy it, you make it yourself.
Exactly. It suggests a major shift in mindset from complaining about the economy to actively preparing for physical conflict.
And that bridges us perfectly to the reality on the streets right now. The sources use the metaphor of a pressure cooker.
I want to dig into this because we often hear about unrest in China, but it usually feels very localized. A village here, a factory there.
Right. But these reports paint a picture of a systemic breakdown in law and order in major Tier 1 cities. We are seeing reports of an abnormal state, car dealerships being bombed, shops being smashed.
But the detail that really stuck out to me as the most indicative crime is the theft of food deliveries in broad daylight.
It really is.
Think about that for a moment. Stolen takeout. That screams desperation. That isn't organized crime. It is pure survival. And it's fueling a serious class conflict.
Look at the protests from December 2025, referenced in the dossier. This wasn't university students in Tiananmen Square. This was the gig economy.
Delivery workers in Sichuan, Hunan, Shenzhen.
Yes, the army of scooter drivers that actually keeps these megacities fed.
But here is the technical trigger for those protests. The authorities banned e-scooters from residential compounds in several districts.
Which, on the surface, just looks like a standard traffic safety rule.
Right, but for a delivery driver, time is literal money. If you have to park at the gate and walk the food all the way through a massive apartment complex, your delivery time triples.
Your income is cut by 60% overnight.
So it's a policy decision made by officials that completely ignores the economic reality of the working class. And because the algorithmic pressure hasn't changed, the apps are still demanding speed, these workers just broke.
But it's not just the private sector breaking. This is the key insight we really need to highlight from this segment. The fiscal crisis has hit the government employees now.
Sanitation workers going unpaid for months.
Exactly. And you might ask, how is that possible? We always assume the central government has infinite pockets to maintain stability. But the local government financing vehicles, the LGFEs, are completely drained.
The centralized system sucks all the resources up to Beijing to meet national targets, leaving the local municipalities basically empty-handed.
And when you can't pay the people who clean the streets, the government's promise of social stability becomes a mathematical impossibility.
So how does the state respond? If the carrot of economic growth is gone and they can't even pay for the carrot of stability maintenance, they must be relying entirely on the stick.
They are militarizing daily life. The sources describe anti-riot drills happening inside hospitals.
Inside hospitals?
Yes, these are places of healing, yet they are now flashpoints for violence because people are desperate for medical care they simply can't afford.
In Beijing, Subway Line 5 has ramped up security to the point where it's causing massive bottlenecks just for people trying to get to work.
But the most telling indicator, they canceled the New Year's Eve 2026 celebrations.
The official reason given was risk prevention.
Right, but reading between the lines of the internal memos, the real fear is crowds. The CCP is now more afraid of its own people gathering in large numbers than it is of a virus or anything else.
This represents a fundamental shift in the relationship between the state and the citizen. So you have a population that is arming itself with crossbows and anger, streets that are volatile, and a government that is locking down the cities, which leads to the next logical step.
If I'm a citizen with the means, I'm trying to get out.
Exactly. And that is where the trap snaps shut. The Iron Curtain is closing, but it's a digital one.
We are seeing a reported 300% surge in travelers being stopped at airports compared to last year.
Major hubs like Shanghai Pudong are conducting thousands of secondary inspections daily. And this isn't just random checks.
No, the notes mention a red alert system. It's an integration of the social credit system and border control.
If your data profile triggers a flag, maybe you owe money, maybe you posted something critical, maybe you just moved large assets, the border police get a red prompt, and there is no negotiation.
It doesn't matter if you have a valid visa or a paid plane ticket.
There was one case study in the documents that I found particularly chilling. A man named Sam.
Ah, the Australian citizen.
Right. He naturalized in Australia back in 2011. He returns to China just to visit family. He tries to leave from Xi'an Airport, and the system flags him. He is told he absolutely cannot leave the country until he cancels his Chinese household registration. His hukou.
Now, for those of you listening who aren't familiar with the hukou system, let me explain why this is such a massive deal.
It's basically your anchor right.
Exactly. It ties you to social services, property rights, the healthcare system, and the pension system. By forcing him to cancel it, the state is essentially stripping him of his legal existence and rights in China.
And to really twist the knife, they fined him 500 RMB a day until he complied.
There was another case, too, a Shanghai resident with a European passport. Same pattern. He was detained for an hour and told his local registration was incompatible with leaving.
He argued he needed it for domestic train tickets and managing family affairs, and the police basically said, not our problem. Erase yourself from the system or stay here forever.
Which begs the question, why? Why is the government doing this? Is it purely about social control? Or is there a deeper driver?
The sources suggest it is almost certainly a fiscal purge. We have to look at the pension crisis.
Right. The National Basic Pension Fund is projected to be completely exhausted by 2035.
It's brutal accounting. If you force overseas Chinese, who are generally likely to live longer and have higher claims, to cancel their hukou, you legally remove them from the benefits pool.
You don't have to pay them a pension anymore. It's a fiscal purge disguised as a legal border crackdown. They are saving money by erasing people's rights.
And the emotional toll of that is massive. One woman living in Thailand found out her registration was canceled remotely. She was quoted saying, "It feels like home is no longer home."
It's a complete severance of the ancestral tie for these overseas Chinese.
So let's recap where we are for a moment. We have political unrest, we have a literal lockdown on movement. But underneath all of this, the engine driving the desperation is the economy.
The notes mention the three pillars are collapsing simultaneously: real estate, finance, and manufacturing.
In the past, if one wobbled, the others held it up. Now, all three are structurally failing at the same time.
We've heard about real estate for years, of course, Evergrande, Country Garden, but the forecast is now for a downturn lasting 8 to 10 years.
Even with mortgage rates hitting historic lows, nobody is buying.
Why would they? The psychological floor has dropped out. Everyone is terrified they'll lose their job next month.
And that brings up the lie flat culture. We've discussed this phenomenon before, but it seems to have evolved from a lifestyle choice into a grim survival strategy.
It's no longer just about young people rejecting the corporate rat race. It's about the fact that ambition has a negative return on investment.
Young people are shifting from pursuing careers to just gig survival. Side hustles are replacing actual jobs. You walk down formerly busy commercial streets in Shenzhen or Shanghai, and it's just a sea of for rent signs.
The vacancy rates are the stark visual evidence of the recession.
But there's a micro-level story in the research here that I found absolutely horrifying. It really illustrates what happens to the basic ethics of a society when the economy gets this desperate.
The toxic jewelry scandal.
Yes, this is the stuff that keeps you up at night. It's a perfect, tragic example of the race to the bottom. So here's what is happening. Jewelry is being sold online, aggressively labeled as pure silver or gold, intended for gifts.